Did you know that there are castles throughout the land of Israel from the time period of the Crusaders 1,000 years ago? Shalom, my friends. This is the Kiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or want to leave a comment, please do so below in the comments. So, all over this land, in different parts of this country, you can find these semi-intact castles, these humongous sites, these massive buildings that go back around 1,000 years ago to the time that the Crusaders ruled this land. Right? They had come in the end of the 11th century. They conquered the land, and they kept control of this land for a good 2 centuries before being defeated by the Muslims afterwards. But throughout this land, during the time of their control, they built these humongous castles for defense purposes, right? To really ground and root their control of this land in general, and specifically different parts and portions of it. And you can see them in very, very strategic locations, up on hills, next to rivers, along the ocean. I can go visit a former Crusader castle, literally about 8 minutes from my house. In the modern area city of Caesarea, which obviously, Caesarea, I should say, which is obviously the ancient city of Caesarea. Eventually, the Crusaders took over that area as well and built a Crusader fortress castle. It's very interesting because when you visit these places, especially the ones that are more intact, you can really see how they use the same kind of blueprint, so to speak, the same design as they did in Europe, complete with the moat and the bridge, even if there wasn't water coming into the moat. It was a copy-paste kind of building project from what they did and were used to doing in Europe. I want to share with you one of these Crusader buildings, which is very, very significant today. As often happens in this land, you go to one historical site and you learn about multiple layers of history, not just one historical event or one historical time, but many, one on top of the other. We see this in many archaeological sites throughout the country. Well, in the city of Akko, right along the Mediterranean, which is just about 30 minutes from where I live, you come upon this massive building. Today it's a museum. I'll get back to that in a second. But originally, this building was built as a Crusader fortress, right? Again, with the moat and with the bridge and these massive buildings. This was one of their fortresses, which really, again, rooted their control of this land in this land. Now, eventually, after they got defeated, many hundreds of years later, it was used as a prison by the Muslim rulers of this land. Fast forward even more, eventually the British will take over. After World War I, they'll be given the mandate of Palestine by the League of Nations. They will turn that into a prison as well, under their control. And in that prison will be held many Jewish resistance fighters, right? Because as time went on, the British were backtracking on their obligations to oversee the establishment of the Jewish state. And they were making it more and more difficult for this Jewish state to come about. And so different organizations formed fighting the British and their unfair rules. And many of these fighters got arrested and they were put in prison in Akko. And because of that, once the state of Israel was founded in 1948, and they took control over this building in the city of Akko, eventually, many years later, it became a testament, a monument, and a memorial and a museum to these resistance fighters. And you can go there today. And amongst all the other amazing things you can see in Akko, you go visit this museum, which tells the story of these resistance fighters in different rooms. You can visit different cells and hear about different prisoners, hear about different stories. And it's really interesting because in 1799, just to backtrack a little bit, Napoleon, on his attempted conquest of this land, he attacked Akko and he failed. And that was one of his few failures in this land, but eventually what brought about his general failure of taking over this land, again in 1799. And when you visit this museum, which used to be a prison, which used to be a Crusader fortress, you can see cannonballs stuck in the walls from the time of Napoleon attempting to overtake this building and the entire city of Akko in general. So that's, again, just a real testament of the varied and various layers of history in this land, so many of these layers, so many of these levels, and you can visit some of these buildings that go back around 1,000 years ago, and inside hear the stories of all the things that took place then and since.